The music was loud, but the silence around her was louder. In a hall glowing with golden chandeliers and laughter that echoed like a celebration of everything she had lost, she sat alone in her wheelchair, dressed in elegance, surrounded by beauty, yet invisible in the cruelest way possible. Couples twirled across the polished floor, heels clicking, suits swaying, hands held tightly, but no one came near her. No one even tried. She wasn't just ignored, she was avoided. And in that moment, as she lowered her eyes to her trembling hands, it felt like the world had already decided her story wasn't worth finishing. If you believe that kindness still exists in this world, that people deserve second chances and moments of dignity, take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because this story might just remind you why humanity still matters. Her name was Amara, and she hadn't always known this kind of silence. Once she had been the girl who filled rooms with laughter, the girl who danced without fear, barefoot on grass, in crowded rooms in the rain. Movement had been her language, her joy, her identity. She remembered spinning until she was dizzy, falling into giggles, her heart light and her future wide open. But life, as it often does, changed without warning. A year ago, a single accident had taken everything from her. A late-night drive, a slippery road, a moment of lost control, and suddenly, the world she knew collapsed into metal, glass, and unbearable pain. When she woke up in the hospital, she couldn't feel her legs. Doctors spoke gently, but their words carried the weight of finality. The damage was permanent. She would never walk again. At first, she thought the worst part would be the physical loss. The inability to move, to dance, to feel the ground beneath her feet. But she was wrong. The real pain came later, in quiet, everyday moments. The way people looked at her differently, the pity in their eyes, the hesitation in their voices, the subtle but unmistakable shift from seeing her as a person to seeing her as a condition. And tonight was proof of that. The gala had been her first real attempt to step back into the world she once belonged to. It was a prestigious event, filled with influential people, bright lights, and opportunities. She had spent hours preparing, choosing a dress that made her feel like herself again, practicing her smile in the mirror, convincing her heart that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But as the night unfolded, reality settled in like a cold shadow. People greeted her politely, but their conversations never lasted. Invitations to dance floated around the room, but never reached her. Even those who knew her before seemed unsure, as if they didn't know how to interact with the version of her that now existed. So she sat there watching life happen around her, feeling like a ghost at her own story. She tried not to cry. Across the room, laughter erupted from a group of well-dressed guests. A man spun his partner dramatically, earning applause. Someone else raised a toast. The music swelled vibrant and alive, mocking the stillness she was trapped in. And then, quietly, something shifted. The grand doors at the entrance opened again, but this time no one paid much attention. The person who walked in didn't carry the same polished aura as the others. His suit was simple, slightly worn, his shoes not as shiny. He didn't belong to the world of wealth and influence that filled the room, but he carried something else, something far more powerful. His name was Daniel, a scholarship student who had been invited to the gala as part of a recognition program. He had worked tirelessly to earn his place, balancing studies, part-time jobs, and responsibilities that most people in that room would never understand. This event wasn't just a celebration for him, it was a glimpse into a world he had fought to reach. Yet, as he stepped inside, his eyes didn't linger on the chandeliers or the elegant guests. They found her, Amara. There was something about the way she sat, dignified yet burdened, that caught his attention. It wasn't pity he felt, it was recognition. He knew what it meant to feel out of place, to stand at the edges of a world that didn't quite accept you. For a moment, he hesitated. Not because he didn't want to approach her, but because he understood what that step meant. It meant breaking the invisible barrier that everyone else had chosen to respect. It meant risking awkwardness, judgment, rejection. But then he saw her look down again, her shoulders slightly sinking, and the hesitation disappeared. He began to walk toward her. Each step felt louder than the music, heavier than the expectations around him. A few people noticed, their conversations faltering slightly. It wasn't common to see someone approach her, not like this. Amara didn't notice him at first. She was lost in her thoughts, replaying memories of who she used to be. trying to reconcile them with who she had become. But then she felt it, a presence. She looked up, and there he was. Not smiling widely, not overly confident, just real, genuine, human. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then, gently, he extended his hand, not out of obligation, not out of pity, but out of invitation. The room seemed to hold its breath. Amara's heart raced. She didn't know what to do. No one had asked her to dance since the accident. Not once. The idea felt impossible, almost cruel in its hope. But there was something in his eyes. Something steady. Something kind. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand in his. And in that simple gesture, everything changed. What followed wasn't a traditional dance. There were no spins across the floor, no synchronized steps. But it was something far more beautiful. Daniel didn't try to make her stand. He didn't try to fixate the moment. Instead, he adapted. He moved with her, around her, guiding the rhythm in a way that included her, honored her. The wheelchair became part of the dance, not a limitation. He spun it gently, matched his movements to hers, creating a harmony that no one had expected. At first, people watched with curiosity. Then with surprise, and finally with something deeper, respect. The music softened as if the room itself was adjusting to the moment. Conversations faded, eyes turned. Phones were slowly lowered as people realized they were witnessing something they couldn't quite explain, but couldn't look away from. Amara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Not physical, but emotional. The weight she had been carrying, the fear, the doubt, the sense of being less than began to lift. For the first time since the accident, she wasn't defined by what she couldn't do. She was simply dancing. Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't fall. Not yet. Daniel didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than anything he could have said. He saw her, not her chair, not her condition, her, and that changed everything. As the song reached its end, the room erupted into applause. But it wasn't the kind of applause given out of politeness. It was real, powerful, earned. Amara's tears finally spilled over, but this time, they weren't born from sadness. They were the release of everything she had been holding inside for so long. She realized something in that moment. Her story hadn't ended. It had just taken a different path. And sometimes the most beautiful moments come from the paths we never planned to take. Before we reach the end of this story, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this moment touched you, if you felt even a glimpse of what Amara felt, please take a second to like, comment, and share this video. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need them the most. And here's something special. Before the ending, I want you to comment one word, I'd-ness. Because sometimes one small act is all it takes to change someone's world. As the night continued, something subtle but powerful shifted in the room. People began to approach Amara, not with pity, but with genuine interest. Conversations lasted longer, smiles reached their eyes. The barrier that had once separated her from everyone else began to dissolve. And Daniel? He didn't stay in the spotlight. After the dance, he simply nodded, offered a quiet smile, and stepped back into the crowd as if what he had done was nothing extraordinary. But it was. Because in a world that often looks away, he chose to see. In a room full of people who hesitated, he chose to act. And in doing so, he reminded everyone, including Amara, that dignity, respect, and humanity are not reserved for the perfect or the powerful. They belong to everyone. As Amara left the gala that night, something inside her had changed. The pain of her past didn't disappear. The challenges ahead were still real. But now they didn't feel impossible because she had been reminded of something important. She was still worthy, still capable. Bye-yo. Still alive in ways that mattered. And sometimes all it takes is one person to remind us of that. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something real, don't just scroll away. Engage with it. Share it. Let it be a reminder that kindness isn't just an idea, it's a choice. A choice that can change everything. The applause faded, but the echo of that moment stayed alive in every corner of the room and deep within Amara's chest. She didn't sleep that night. Not because of sadness, as it had been for so many nights before, but because something unfamiliar had taken its place. A quiet, fragile hope. The kind that feels almost dangerous when you spent so long learning how not to expect anything good. She replayed the dance over and over in her mind, the way Daniel had looked at her, not with sympathy, but with certainty. The way he had moved without hesitation, as if her wheelchair wasn't an obstacle, but simply a different rhythm to follow. The way, for a few minutes, she had forgotten everything she had lost, and remembered everything she still was. But as dawn crept through her window, reality returned, softer this time, but still present. One moment doesn't erase a year of pain, and one act of kindness doesn't magically fix a broken world. The next morning, the silence felt different. Not as heavy, but not entirely gone either. Amara sat by her window, watching the city wake up. Cars moved, people hurried, life continued, indifferent yet constant. She wondered if last night had only been a beautiful exception, or the beginning of something more. Days passed. The memory of the gala began to circulate. Videos of the dance appeared online, shared by guests who had been too moved to keep it to themselves. Comments flooded in, strangers from all over the world expressing admiration, surprise, even guilt. Some admitted they had never thought about how isolating such moments could be. Others simply called it beautiful. But what struck Amara the most wasn't the attention, it was the message. People weren't just reacting to the dance. They were reacting to the truth behind it, and for the first time, she realized her story wasn't just hers anymore. It meant something. At first, she hesitated. Sharing her journey meant exposing her pain, her vulnerability, the parts of herself she had spent months trying to hide. It meant opening doors she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. But then she remembered something. That night hadn't been about perfection. It had been about courage. So slowly she began. It started with a single post, a picture from the gala paired with words she had rewritten at least 20 times before finally pressing a share. She didn't try to sound strong. She didn't pretend everything was okay. She told the truth. About the accident, about the loneliness, about the invisible barriers that hurt more than the physical ones, and about the moment someone chose to see her when the world didn't. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in, people sharing their own stories, their struggles, their moments of feeling unseen. Some were in wheelchairs, some weren't, but all of them understood what it felt like to be overlooked. And suddenly, Amara wasn't alone anymore. Weeks turned into months. Cool weeks turned into months. What started as one post became many. What began as a single voice grew into a platform. She spoke openly, honestly, sometimes painfully, but always with purpose. She didn't just talk about challenges. She talked about identity, dignity, and the quiet strength it takes to keep showing up in a world that doesn't always make space for you. But even as her voice grew louder, one question lingered quietly in her heart. Daniel, he had disappeared as quietly as he had arrived. No grand introduction, no expectation of recognition. Just a moment, and then gone. She didn't even know his full story, but somehow that made his impact even greater. Because he hadn't done it for attention. He had done it because it was right. One afternoon, as she prepared for a small community event she had been invited to speak at, something unexpected happened. A message. Simple. Direct. It was from him. He had seen the video, then her posts, then everything that followed. He hadn't intended to reach out, he admitted, but something told him he should. For a long moment, Amara just stared at the screen. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she didn't know how to explain what that one moment had meant to her. They met a few days later. No grand setting this time, no chandeliers or formal attire, just a quiet cafe, sunlight spilling through the windows, the kind of place where conversations could exist without pressure. At first, it felt almost surreal. Two people who had shared such a powerful moment, yet barely knew each other. But slowly, naturally, the conversation unfolded. Amara learned about Daniel's life, the struggles he had faced, the sacrifices he had made, the weight he had carried long before that night. He wasn't just a scholarship student. He was someone who understood hardship in a way that shaped how he saw the world, and he learned about her. Not just the accident, but the life before it, the dancing, the dreams, the parts of her that still lived beneath everything she had been through. What surprised her most wasn't what he said. It was what he didn't say. He didn't call her inspiring. He didn't treat her like someone fragile or extraordinary. He treated her like a person. And somehow, that meant more than anything else. As time passed, their connection grew, not defined by that one dance, but strengthened by everything that came after it. They supported each other in ways that didn't need to be announced. In small gestures, in quiet understanding. And Amara continued to grow, not into the person she used to be, but into someone new. Someone who had faced loss and still chose to live fully. Someone who had been ignored and then chose to be seen. 1 year after the gala, something remarkable happened. Amara organized an event. Not a grand, exclusive gathering like the one she had once attended, but something different. Something meaningful. A night of inclusion. A night where no one would be left sitting alone. The venue wasn't the most luxurious, but it didn't need to be. What mattered was the intention behind it. Invitations were sent out to people from all walks of life, all abilities, all stories. And when the night arrived, the room felt alive in a different way. There was laughter, yes. Music, yes, but there was also something deeper. Amara sat at the center not as someone being overlooked, but as someone who had created space for others. And then, when the music began, something beautiful happened. People didn't wait. They didn't hesitate. They moved toward each other, offering hands, sharing moments, breaking barriers that had once seemed invisible but unbreakable. And this time, Amara didn't wait either. She moved forward, confident, present, free, because she no longer needed permission to belong. She had claimed her place. As the night unfolded, she caught a glimpse of Daniel across the room. He wasn't at the center, he never tried to be. But he was there, watching, quietly smiling, knowing that something he had done without expectation had helped spark something much bigger, something lasting. Before we close this story, I want to ask you one last time from the heart. If this journey moved you, if it made you think differently, feel more deeply, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. Stories like this don't just entertain, they remind us of who we can be. And if you've stayed until now, here's that special request again. Comment the word of kindness below. Because the world needs more of it, and maybe someone out there needs to see that they're not alone. As the final song played that night, Amara looked around the room she had once feared entering. And she smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because it wasn't. And yet, it was still beautiful. Because sometimes the most powerful changes don't come from grand gestures. They come from one simple choice: to see someone, to include someone, to remind someone that they matter. And that choice, it can change everything.